So we've been walking 50 meadows and we are here in front of the RhôneRiver, the old Rhône. So let's say the part that's still quite natural of the RhôneRiver. So as I said earlier, this territory is not specifically well known for its natural space or environment, but rather for the industrial nature of it. It's all the more true that until the end of the 70s, the island that's in front of us was sometimes used as a waste deposit site, waste disposal site, so to dispose industrial waste. Since then it was recovered, the nature grew again, but when performing renaturation work, for example, we just pay attention not to dig anywhere. So our mission since the middle of the 90s has both been to preserve environments and habitats. So to do so, we have a team of 9 people with technicians who are carrying out natural studies all year long. So they are monitoring some species, some taxons. Some colleagues intervene to maintain open meadows. We also work with farmers. So we've got like farmers doing eco-grazing, for example, to maintain some part of the environment. Our second mission is addressing the population, because as part of our goals, we want to have people discover the site and the biodiversity stakes. So currently we're working on a 10-year management plan that is leading us until 2030. And what's new compared to the 90s and to the years 2000 is that we clearly integrated the social nature, the social aspects in our management goals. For example, compared to 20 years ago and the way we were doing things at that time, and it's important mentioning it because it's completely part of the restoration project we're going to present this afternoon. So 20 years ago, we didn't really care about what the population could think about it. We would work as project managers, engineers, and when we considered that this had a positive impact for a species or for an environment, that was the end of the discussion, and we would just go for it. Today, we sometimes need to cut off trees for safety purposes or to maintain spaces open. And today, the local population and the site users are questioning this, although it was not the case in the past. So basically it means that the local population is paying a lot of importance to the natural environment, which is a good thing. And in the new stakes that have been identified 3 years ago, we have the need to be able to manage in a sustainable way and to be able to share together with local inhabitants and the territory stakeholders. So for 30 years we've built a scientific committee with people supporting us in our management decisions. And now for 3 years we also have a users committee to whom we are accountable. We need to explain beforehand the developments and the projects we want to implement. We listen to their perceptions, to their views, and very often this is pushing us to review things, or we think maybe we didn't explain things in a proper way, and we need to reformulate things. So just to say that the social aspect of it took a lot of importance, and the very first aspect I want to mention, and that was the start of all this, because these restoration projects are very complex. We're not experts, we are not hydraulic engineers, we are not in charge of operating the river, but we are lucky to be able to work with partners who trust us, and CNR chose a consultation method to define the restoration project, and Stéphane will address this later on. But to start with, we're going to address the technical aspect of the restoration project. So regarding this first point, I am going to tell you about the first restoration works introduced by Damien, and that took place 20 years ago. And in the second step, we will address the project that is going to start in the coming months. So first of all, some background information regarding the site development and the history of the Rhône River and the Rhône development. So here you have a map of the 19th century, so 1860. We are located right there. So in blue you can see the Rhône River as it was at the time. So you can see that the river had a braids profile with multiple branches, multiple arms, and islands that were mobile depending on the floods. And there you can see that we crossed a bridge, and this backwater has water inside. So basically this is the remaining part of this branch here, of this arm. So what happened with the site developments? You can see the red dashes, the red lines. These are the first developments that took place on the river with the morphology that you can see at that time. So in the 19th century, there was a first generation of developments that consisted in dikes and groins or spurs with rock fill, and the goal was to improve navigation conditions on the Rhône River. So the goal was to concentrate the water in a single channel and to block the secondary arms and to remove all the wrong ways for navigation. So there were inactivities of low water inactivities that were quite important. The effect was the first consequence was to block the secondary arms and to disconnect the margins of the river. So this lateral part was completely disconnected from the main channel. That created quiet waters that started to be filled with sediments, and in the second half of the 20th century there was a second generation of developments, and basically hydropower developments. So that's not a real development, it's just to show you what it looked like. So basically you have the Rhône River the way it was before in the 19th century. Here you've got the works or the facilities that were developed in the 19th centuries, and from the 20th century onwards a diversion canal was created with a hydropower plant. So the major part of the discharge was diverted to the plant via this channel, and the other part received a reserved discharge, so the compensation water. So here we are located 4 kilometers downstream of the dam. The diversion canal, you've probably crossed it depending on which way you came from, so it's just behind the woods that you can see here, and the factory is about 4 kilometers upstream. So this is the dam that was started in 1966. That was at the commissioning moment, the moment of the commissioning. So there you can see the former works. So in terms of developments, I don't really have pictures to present the first works, but basically you should remind that this profile with secondary arms and the entire biodiversity that related to those secondary arms, basically this was a lot of it was drained. And at the end of the year 2000, the Rhône had the profile of a single channel that you can see here. Secondary arms almost all disappeared, and here you have a view of the former works. And the goal of the first works at that time was first of all to recreate secondary branches, secondary arms. So the principles at that time had a diversity of purposes. We had a river with oxbows, secondary branches that were sometimes closed depending on the floods, with environments that were really proper to that way of working. And the goal of the first works was to recreate the diversity of branches of arms. So a current one that is permanently connected, that we're going to walk along later on. Another so-called Rhône, so basically it's a regional word. Rhône in French, it's an oxbow. It's all backwaters. So that's the one we crossed earlier, and the goal of the works at that time, here on the picture. So we crossed that section here. The goal was to dig in order to reach the water table, the groundwater again. So that was reconnected in a permanent way. And there was a third Rhône, a third oxbow on the opposite river that was reconnected from downstream. These also related to the hydroelectric power dam. So the major part of the discharge was going through the channel. The discharge was 10 to 20 cubic meter per second, knowing that the average flow rate here is 1,000 cubic meter per second yearly. So basically, for all the current waters species like fishes and stuff, some habitats were not favorable anymore. So this restoration project consisted in increasing the compensation water that was increased from 10 cubic meters per second to 100 cubic meters per second. So that was in the years 2000. The works were performed in 1999 and 2000, and the framework Water Directive in France was translated into the national law in 2006, and the increase of the reserve discharge as provided by the Water Framework Directive was implemented in 2014 for this part here. So basically we had an increased way before this was provided by the European law. So this is to give you an overview of those significant earthworks. Just to show you, it's about 150,000 cubic meters for those arms. And very quickly, the philosophy of the projects we are dealing with currently is slightly changed, and we are also starting to work again on those first environments, because there have also been some negative developments. I did not mention the discontinuation of the sediment transport. The Rhône became deeper, and today we have a bit more than the reserved discharge. And if we are at the reserve discharge today, this arm is not connected anymore, so we want to solve this. In the Rhône behind you, we have another development that we did not expect. It's the arrival of a species called primrose. So it's a vegetal species that we are going to present later on.